I hope you all doing well. So participants are less today. So students, kindly ask your friends to join. So we'll start for the day. Shivaram sir, you can start for the
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So, hello all. Good evening. So, I hope everyone's having a good day. Let me just share my screen. So, yeah. So, coming to today. So, today is the day 6 of React. So, what we'll do today is, so we'll build a project called as a calculator application. So, this project covers all the concepts which we went through yesterday. And then after that, tomorrow we are going to finish React with some advanced topics like routing and then control components, uncontrolled components, and then Redux. So today we are going to build a project. It's a calculator application. So the thing is, so instead of the unique thing of today's project is, so instead of writing CSS, we'll be using something called as Tailwind CSS. So usually when like most of the time, if you go for big companies, so if you're using React as a front-end framework, so usually they'll be using Tailwind CSS. So today we'll be building a calculator application using Tailwind CSS. Okay, so for that, what we'll do, yeah, come to your desktop and then open the VS Code. So now what I'll do, I'll open my VS Code and then I'll go to the same project yesterday. Which one? File, open folder, and then here, I'll select on desktop and then React, select folder. Okay. So now what I'll do, I'll close all this. So now you can see there is a demo project, right? So yesterday we did this project, right? Demo project. So, but today we are going to create a new project. It's called as a calculator. So what we'll do that, first you need to open your terminal, right? So where is your terminal? You need to click on three dots, terminal, new terminal. So in here, what you'll do is, first you need to create a React project. So how do you do that? What is the command? So the command is npm space create white at latest. And then you need to hit on enter. So once you do this, white will ask, what should I name the project as? You can see what is the project name. So I'll give cal app, that means calculator application. And then hit on enter. And then you need to choose the framework which you are going to work on. So today we are working on React, right? So we'll select React. Once you select React, you need to select JavaScript. And then you need to run these three commands. Copy it, paste, and then hit enter. And then second command, paste, enter. So this is how you, what this command does. It installs all our node applications, node packages. So now you can see on to the right side, there is a new project generated, which is the project name calcal, which means our calculator application. So now let this install. So this project, it covers majority of the topics which we went through yesterday. So if you are having your laptops on, follow this. Because this project is commonly asked whenever you go for any interviews, right? Usually they ask you to build a calculator application or also to-do list. So if you get good with this, so it may, so this project may help you in the future also. So try to write the code as a right. So the thing is, so we'll be using something called as Tailwind CSS. So you don't have to worry about it. So yeah, even if you don't know, you can just follow me. So as you type, you'll get to know. So what we are doing. So first you create a React application, and then afterwards you need to copy paste these commands. So now my node packages has been installed. So what is the third command to run our React application? npm run dev, right? Click on paste and then npm runtime. So now our React application is running. So I will open this in my browser. So copy this localhost, go to your browser and then paste. So now my React application is running, right? You can see here. So now what I need to do? I need to remove all this unnecessary files which has been generated. So how do I do that? First, whenever you create a React application, so it will give you some boilerplate code, which is like some unnecessary code. So you have to remove that. So how do you remove that? To remove that, what you have to do is go to your calc application, src app.jsx. So inside app.jsx, what you will do, you need to remove this everything. Yeah. Then you need to remove this also state. As of now, we don't need a state. Yeah. Then remove all these files. We are just cleaning the boilerplate code and then go to your app.css and then remove everything. Control A, backspace. Okay. And then you need to come to your index.css, Control A, backspace. So now you can see our React application is fresh, right? So now what we'll do, let's start generating components. So for our calculator application, we are going to be using 3 components. So what are those components? First, where do you create the components? You need to create the components inside your SRC, right? So go to your SRC, right click, and then new folder, components. Hit enter. So now here you need to create 3 components. So what are those components? First is new file. First, you need to create a component called as a calculator. Dot. What is the extension for our component files? JSX. Okay. Then you need to generate another component. This buttons container. I will make it big so you can see. Buttons container dot JSX. I will say why we are generating these components. As of now, you need to generate 3 components. So once this is done, you need to generate another component. This is calculator display dot JSX. Okay. So now we have created 3 files. So how do I generate a component, a function? So for that, what is the short form? Yesterday we went right. The short form is RAFCE. So first I'll go to my buttons container and then I need to type RAFCE. So our buttons component is successfully generated. Buttons container. So next is calculator. Here also you need to type the same command RAFCE. Okay. So third is calculator display. Here also you need to generate the command. So what is the command? RAFCE. Then hit on enter. Okay. So now you have generated 3 components successfully. So now what we'll do, how do I check whether my component is rendering or not? I need to call this component inside my root application, right? So which is my root component app. So what I will do, I'll go to my app.jsx. So inside my app.jsx, where do I need to attach my component? Inside my return, right? This is the JSX, right? Yesterday we went through what is JSX. So here I need to call my calculator component. So how do I call that? The syntax is left angle bracket, calculator, close. So this is how you call the component. So once you call this component, you can see in the browser, you can see our calculator component is successfully running. Okay. So now once you are getting this data, that means you have successfully generated the components and then you are successfully using the components. So now what we did is, say for example, you take any calculator. I'll just type calculator images. You can see if you take any calculator, right? We need to divide this into components. So that's how you think as a developer. So as a developer, what you need to do is you cannot write the whole code inside a single file. So what you need to do is, so whenever you're trying to achieve a problem or else trying to solve a problem, you need to try to divide it. So what I did is basically I created a calculator component for the full calculator. Second, the display part, right? For that, I generated a different component. And then the buttons part, right? Generated a separate component. At last, I'll stitch all three together. Did you understand this? This is how you split your UI into different components. That's why I created a calculator and then buttons and then display. Because these are the three key things in your calculator application. So once you do this, you need to install something called as a CDN for a Tailwind CSS. So for Tailwind CSS, I have pasted the CDN in the PPT. It's inside here. I'll show just a minute. First, you need to go to your index.html. So after here, you need to attach it inside your script file. Okay. So here you can go through. This is your CDN to make your Tailwind work. So, say for example, if you want to use any third-party package, right, there are two ways. One is you can locally install it. So we are not installing, we are just using a CDN for it. So the command is you can type this command in our application, https colon /cdn dot tailwind css.com. So once you do this, we have successfully linked through our CDN through our Tailwind CSS. So now what we'll do is, let's start writing JSX. So what is JSX? JSX is nothing but a React programming language, right? So now we have successfully attached Tailwind CSS to our application. So what is Tailwind CSS? You'll be having a dot, right? So Tailwind CSS is nothing but a package. So what they did is, instead of creating a separate CSS file, you can write your CSS inside your HTML itself. You can see here. But the syntax will be kind of different. But what it does is, if you use Tailwind, right, you don't have to create a separate CSS file. You can write your CSS inside your HTML itself. Here you can see it's writing CSS inside the HTML itself. So this is the use of Tailwind CSS. It's nothing but a inline CSS. You can see you can create these different animations and all using inline CSS. How do you do that? Using Tailwind. Okay, so here we have attached the Tailwind to our calculator application. So now let's start writing the code. So the thing is, when you open a calculator, you can see first is I need to create a body of the calculator, right? I'll open this image. You can see first I need to create the body, right? The outline for this. So now let's start creating our outline. So to create the outline, first you need to go to your calculator component. So here what you'll do, where should you write your JSX? It should be inside the return, right? So now what I'll do is I'll just move this to the side so that you can see as we are writing the code. I'll open my application. Okay. So now what we'll do, I'll write the code here. You can see how it runs in the UI. Okay. So now what we'll do, let's start writing our JSX. So for that, first is remove this. And then inside the div, what you have to do is, first is you need to create a class name. So what is the class name? So here you don't have to by heart Tailwind CSS files and all. You just type as I'm typing. So you'll get to know how it works. Okay, first what I'll do is I'll create a gray background for this. It looks white, right? So what I'll do, BG gray 800. So this is the syntax on how to use your Tailwind CSS. So basically what we what they did is, so instead of writing background color gray and then specifying the intensity of it, so Tailwind CSS is nothing but your inline, right? So what they did is they gave you a syntax where you can write it in this way. This means nothing but your background color, make it gray, and then this much amount of opacity. So what Tailwind does is this, it will convert this short forms into your CSS. Okay. So instead of creating separate CSS files, what Tailwind does is it will make you write the inline CSS. The reason why we are using Tailwind is because whenever you're using React, right, most of the time, the big companies, they'll use Tailwind CSS itself. So for you guys to get familiar with Tailwind CSS, we're going to build this project with using Tailwind CSS. So now once this is done, so second is I'll make the text white. You can see, so this is just like your English, right? So as I'm typing, it will add the styles for this. So first I set the background color to gray and then text is white. So then I need to make it throughout the screen, right? So for that, width is screen and then height is screen. So you don't have to remember this. So you can see it has been affected. My width and height has been set as a gray. Okay, you don't have to understand this. You just try to write like follow what are I'm typing. So as you write Tailwind CSS, as you create different components in React, you will get familiar with it. Okay. So basically, I'll try to explain what I'm writing also. This sets the background. This will make the text white. This I'm making width and height to full screen. So if you're using CSS, you need to use commands like different commands, right? Width, height, and then you need to set what you call it as view width, view height, and all. But in Tailwind CSS, you write all the CSS inside the inline files itself. Okay. So now what we need to do is, so now the background gray color is set. So next, what we'll do, just a minute, I'll move it to even more, right? So that you can see better. So next, what we'll do, we need to make it a flex box because I want my calculator in the middle, right? So for that, I'll create a flex box. So how do you create a flex box in Tailwind? First, you need to create flex and then justify. Just a minute, I'll reduce this size. Justify, center, and then align. What it basically does is whatever calculator we create, it will make it as a flex box and then it will align the justify and align items in the center. Okay, this is how you create a flex box inside the Tailwind CSS. But in pure CSS, you'll create display flex, justify content center, right? But in here, since it's inline, this is the syntax you have to follow. Okay. So now after this, what you need to do? Now we have successfully created a background and then made it a flex box. So now we'll create a container. So here what I'll do, class, make it as main. And then what you need to do, width, I'll set it as 64. That means it will create a view width. And then height, what you'll create, make it auto. Because calculator, right, what I'm basically doing is, this width I'm setting, but the height it can vary. Okay, so for that, what I'm basically doing here, width I'm fixing to 64, height I'm making it auto. That means it can decrease or else increase. So then what I'll do, I'll create this as gray, but I'll reduce the, I'll increase. So now, as of now, you won't see anything, but as you are typing the Tailwind CSS, you'll see the changes. So first you need to make this as main, set the width and height as auto, and then set a background color for this. So once this part is done, you need to reduce the border radius. So for that, the syntax is border rounded, and then you need to set the amount of, you need to round it. So in Tailwind CSS, you have something called as to excel. That means it will reduce the, let me just go through the documentation, you can see. So inside the Tailwind CSS, you can see how do you use different. For example, say if I want to set some display, right? You can see if you want to use display flex, you want to use, you just need to type grid. Say, for example, if I want to set some padding and all, position overflow, you can see if you get confused, right? Say, for example, if you want to know how to use styling and all, you just go to the documentation of Tailwind CSS and then they will only suggest how to use this. You can see how to set gaps, and then you can see we have used this, right? Rounded Excel. So Excel means it's normal, 2XL means it's large. So try to go through this documentation and see how to set different CSS property inside your Tailwind CSS. So here you can see there are so many things. How to set your SVGs, and then how to use filters, effects, borders. So you can see border radius. So in CSS, you'll use border radius and then set the border radius. But in Tailwind, use rounded XS means you can see here 2XL means it is large. XL means okay, LG medium. So this is how you set different properties inside your Tailwind CSS. Okay, did you understand this? So now let's start coding this. So now I'll make it rounded to XL. So after this, what you have to do is I'll create a shadow. I'll open my output. Where is my output? Yeah. So now I'll create a shadow. I'll make it Excel. So then I'll create a border for this. So now after this, I'll set a border gray. I can keep it 500, like 200 or anything up to you. I'll just keep it 100. Okay. Once this part is done, what you need to do to check whether it's working or not inside this div, right? What I'll do is just type something here. You can see now successfully created. So see, you can see it's in the middle, right? That means I'm using this as a flex box, and then I'm setting a width and height for you. You can see the width is fixed. You can see here W is fixed, but the height is auto. You can see as I type, right, the width will increase here. Wait, let me type more. You can see the height will increase, but the width is, you can see the height is increasing, right? But the width is fixed. That's the reason why I made H as auto. Okay, auto means it is dynamic. So then I set the border radius and then border for this, and then created a small shadow. Okay, after this, what I need to do is, so now I have successfully created a container for my calculator outer line. So now what I need to style, I need to style my display. You can see this part, right? This is my display. So now, how do I style my display? For that, you need to go to your calculator display. Okay. So for that, first go to your calculator display. Here, I need to render this inside my container, right? So how do I do that? I need to call my calculator display inside my calculator because this is the container, right? So how do you call that? Go to your calculator inside, call your calculator display. Okay, once this is done, you can see the data inside my calculator display is displaying. So now let's start styling calculator display. Okay, I'll move it to the side so that you guys can see. So once this is done, so here what you'll do is remove this. Okay, you can see if I tap high right, you can see you'll get high here. That means my calculator display is successfully rendering inside my calculator container. So now what you need to do is here also you need to create a div. So inside this div, create a class called as screen. So to the screen, you need to make it as, you need to give a padding. So how do you give a padding in Tailwind CSS? Just P and 2. You can see the small padding has been added. So now what I'll do is I'll create an input. This I'll keep it as text itself. So now at the last, I'll start adding my Tailwind CSS. So class name, what I'll do. So first is you need to make the text as white. And then I'll make it width full. That means it is 100%. So for that, how we'll do? We'll make it W full. Okay. Did you understand this part? So next, what you have to do is, after this, just a minute. So yeah. Inside the input, I'm writing my CSS. You can see as I'm writing the Tailwind CSS, you can see the changes is happening here. Okay. So now what I'll do first, text I've made it white and then width is full. So now what I'll do, I'll create a shadow. Yeah. Shadow, this shadow is something called as inset. So you guys should be familiar with this. So shadow by default, it will put outside. But if you want the shadow inside, you need to use a property called as inset. Inset means the shadow gets added inside our container, not outside the container. By default, it gets added outside. Okay. So for this, what I'll do, inset, and then you need to make it. This is the syntax on how to you create shadows in your Tailwind CSS. You don't get confused by this. Just type what I am typing. As you type on this, as you go through the documentation, you'll figure it out. I'll make it 0, 2 pixel, and then 4 pixel. And then you can see that inside means the shadow gets added inside. So 4 pixel. After that, you need to add the what this means X position, Y position, the spread, and then here you need to create the color RGBE, and then you need to set it. So 0, 0, 0, 0.4. That means if it is 0 zeros, right, that means it is nothing but black color. And then this I'm setting as the transparency. So we went through in Angular project, right? A means transparency. So here I'll make it 6 so that it's more stronger. So now you can see a shadow has been added inside my input. You can see this, I'll zoom in. Let me see this. So now this is how you add an inset shadow inside your Tailwind CSS. So now once this is done, I'll create a placeholder black. Okay. Then we need to make that means padding. So then after this, what you need to do, you need to create a text shadow. After this, what you have to do, you can see this is sharp, right? I want to make this rounded. So for that, what you added in the calculator, you added a property called as rounded, right? Similar thing we'll add here also. Come to your calculator, display is here. You need to add rounded. Rounded, I'll make it. It's up to you. You can add anything you want. So as of now, I'll just use the same thing. Rounded. And now you can see it has been rounded. So next, after what you'll do, you can see there is an outline here, right? I don't want this outline. I'll make it outline. None. So once after this, I'll create a padding top. So now it's bigger, right? So that I'll be having more space here to see. So then once this is done, I'll make the text to right. Because usually you can see, right, in whenever you open a calculator, usually the text starts from the right side, right? I'll show one example. You can see here. Here the text starts from right side, right? So what I'm doing here, similar way, I will add the text, right? That means the text will appear from this side. Okay. So now once this is done, I'll create a text. That means I'm setting the font size for the text. So now I'll go through this again. First, you need to add a text white, make the width as full, and then shadow inset. So this is how you set inset shadow. And then you need to make the placeholder black. Once you do that, you need to set a pixel of 1 and then rounded. And then you need to text shadow and then padding top as 10. And then you made it as a text, right? And then you created the font size. Okay. Did you understand this part? So once after this, you can see the display screen is displaying. So now if I want to type something, right, just set some value here to see how it looks. Text, I'll make it black. Yeah, you can see here. If I make this value as 10, it will come 10. Did you get this part? So now I created a display, and then now I'm successfully able to set the values and then see the value. Okay. So now what you have to do, second is so now we created a container and then a display screen. So now the only part which is remaining is our buttons, right? You can see every calculator has a buttons. So now let's start styling our buttons. So for that, go to your VS Code. So here inside the VS Code, come to your buttons container. Okay. So now what we'll do is, let's start. This is a very complex calculator, right? Just so you can see this is easy, right? So let's start trying to see which all our components are. You can see numbers, right? There are numbers and then there are some operators and then there is a equals to and then there is a C, that means cancel. So let's start creating this. Okay, so come to this. So here, come to the buttons container. So where does the buttons container need to be rendered? So before that, it's better if I add some small text, right? So you can see every calculator has a company name here. It will be having some company name, right? So similar way, let's try to add some small text over here. For that, what you have to do is go to your calculator. In here, out of this calculator display, what you need to do is create another div. Okay. Inside this div, give a class name. Okay. So inside the class name, so type as I'm typing. So first is, let me reduce the screen. So first is, I'll create this as a brand. BG, I'll make it gray. So then, gray, you need to set the intensity of this. BG opacity. So opacity, I'll reduce it to 80 or something. It's up to you. And then margin bottom as 2. Okay. So now once this is done, I'll create a H1 for my text. You can see there is a text appearing here, but I need this at the bottom, right? So for that, what you have to do, inside your H1, give a class name. So for this, make it as text gray. And then you need to set your number of intensity. Then after this, text XS. XS means your font size. Then I'll make it bold. Now you can see it's still appearing here, but I want at the bottom. So what's the problem here? Can anyone see? This is my flex box, but this is outside my flex box. So to make it flex, what I need to do? I need to add this inside my flex box, right? So for that, copy this full thing and then paste it below your calculator display. So now you can see I successfully added a small text for this. Okay, you can see there is a text here. So I'll go to this again. First, you create a brand, BG gray, and then set the background opacity. I'll make this 90 and see how much. I'll create 50. Yeah, this is okay, I guess. And then margin bottom as 2, and then text gray. Make it 9 and see. Yeah, this is okay, I guess. Yeah. So now I set it as bold and then the text center. I made it as center, and then you can see test LG means this is your font size. So this is how, say for example, if you're getting confused here, right? I know it will be confusing at the start. you can refer your Tailwind CSS documentation. So you can see here, I'll just go through how do you set a text and all. As you scroll down, you can see text align. So if you want to do text align left, you just need to do text left. So here what I used, text center. That means text align center. So this is your CSS, but you can't write your CSS in your Tailwind. You have to use its own syntax. So for every CSS, there will be a syntax. So you have to know which to use and so now we have successfully created a calculator display and then a logo for it, our company name. And then now the only part which is remaining is a buttons container, right? So what we'll do is, let's start styling our buttons container. Come to the buttons container. So here, remove this and then start typing this code. First, what you need to do is give a class name here. Okay, class name, keyword. Okay, then inside this, you need to create another class. Okay, I'll just move this to the right so that you can see the code as I'm typing. So here, what I'll do is I'll create another flex box. Flex, wrap. Then I'll create a gap. That means in every row, I need only 3 buttons. Justify between margin 2. Okay. So now what I need to do is inside this, I'll create an input again. So at the last of the input, I'll start adding my class. So here, the thing is first you need to create a text. First, what I'll do is I'll create a you can start with anything. You can start with shadows, padding, and all. So first, I'll start with shadow itself. So shadow, what you have to do is MD means medium. Then I'll set the width 12, and then H. H also 12. Then I'll make it. There's nothing displaying here, right? So for example, what I'll do, I'll just add a background color for this so that it will be active. So BG red. Then what you need to do is rounded LG. That means I'm making it as a round. Okay, so after this, text center. I need to make the text center right. Then font. So don't get confused by this. You just type what I'm typing. So once you start going through the Tailwind CSS documentation, you'll start getting to know what's happening here. Yeah, I'm just setting the border radius. I'm styling my text and all. You can see this is all related to the text and fonts itself. It's not too much complex. Okay. Then after this, further pointer. So now I'll set a value and see how does this display. This is not displaying. Why? Can anyone say? Because I'm not rendering inside my calculator, right? So how do I render inside my calculator? I need to call the buttons container. So how do I call that? From at the bottom of this. So here, call the buttons container. Now you can see it's going outside, but I want it inside. So for that, what I need to do, I need to add it inside the flex box. So which is the flex box? This one, right? So I copy and paste it inside the flex box. So now you can see my button has been successfully added. You get this? So now the thing is, you have 2 options here. First, say for example, in the calculator, you'll be having some 20 buttons. You have to copy paste this input 20 times. But we won't be doing the hard way. We'll be doing a smart work here. So what I'll do is I'll create a variable here. Okay. Const. It should be inside the function, right? Const button names is equals to an array. Inside array, what I will do, I'll add all my calculator button names. Okay, so for that, what you'll be having C, you'll be having numbers, you'll be having operators, right? So instead of copy pasting this input 20, 30 times, what I'll do is I'll add whatever names are the buttons as, and then I'll loop this data. We'll see how we'll achieve that. So here, just type first is C, then you need to type left angle bracket, and then type modulus. It's up to you, you can type whatever you want. But if you type what I'm typing, you'll get in a particular ordered format. Then create 7. After that, create 8. After that, 9. After this, just make it as a star. After that, 4. After this, make it 5. And then 6. And then minus. And then you can type any format you want, but this format, it will give you a proper structure of your calculator. Okay. And then make it as plus. And then make it 0, comma, 0, comma, dot, and that is equals to. So did you get this? What I'm basically doing is I'm just creating a button names so that it contains all the data inside the buttons container. So now what I'll do, the reason why I'm doing this, I don't need to copy this 20, 30 times. So for that, there is something called as loop inside the J6. So what I'll do is, after this, you need to come down. And then how do you write something like JSX inside, for example, if you want to access this variable inside JSX, what you need to do, you need to use flower brackets, right? Flower brackets, and then I need to access my variable name. So what is my variable? Is an array. So in JavaScript, you guys should be familiar with, there is a method called as map, right? What is map used for? You can see here, there is something called as map. Map is used to loop. So the syntax is use dot map brackets, and then this you need to give 2 parameters here. So one is button comma index, and then create a arrow function. So if you're getting confused by this, you guys need to revise your JavaScript. Okay. Then what I'll do, I'll just return, and then I'll copy paste this input inside my loop. So now you can see this is the smart work we are doing. So now you can see, if I go to my, you can see everything is 444, right? So now I'll just show how did I achieve that. You can see here, if I remove this loop, right, I'll just comment this loop. You can see there is nothing. So if you create one, the reason why I'm looping here, for one input, you'll get one button. Say, for example, if I want 20 inputs, I need to copy paste this 20 times, which is a huge amount of work. So what I did is, in a smart way, I created all the button names inside a array, and then I'm looping that array. Whenever I'm looping that array, I'm adding the input inside my map function. So what map function will do, it will loop the data. Okay. So once this is done, you can see here, everything is 4, right? But I want this data to be accessed. So how do you access some data inside a input file? You need to set the value. So instead of 4, what I'll do is, I'll access this variable called as button here. So copy and paste the button inside the value. So once you paste this, you can see the magic here. You can see everything is automatically filled. Okay. So you can see how much time and then how much code we have reduced here. So instead of copy pasting this 20, 30 times, we just created an array. We are looping it using map function, and then we are returning this input, and then we are setting the value as the button. So what happens is, so this map function, first it will look through C, it will add C here. Then it will go to this angle brackets, it will add inside the value. Then it will go to this. So similarly, it will go to all the functions, all the strings here, and then it will add to the value. So that's how we have generated this UI. Okay. So did you understand how to use a map function inside your JSX? So this is how you need to create the components in a smart way, not in a dumb way. So What is the dumb way? Dumb way, you'll copy paste the input 20, 30 times, which is unnecessary. In the smart way, you'll just use a loop. Okay. Once this part is done, you can see here, I can change the value here, but I don't want this to be changed. So what I'll do, in input, there is a property called as read only. You put read only, right? Sorry. So you can see this cannot be changed here. Okay. So now what I need to do is, now there is a concept called as component communication. So yesterday we went through what is component communication, right? So what? Here you can see my root component is the app, right? App is rendering calculator. But what is calculator rendering? Calculator is rendering my calculator display and then my buttons container. So what happens is, whenever I click on this buttons, this buttons data should be sent through what? Sent to the calculator. And then this calculator will send the data to the display. You understood the component communication, how it will happen inside this project. First, whenever you click on this data should be sent through your calculator. And then this calculator will send the data to your display component. So whatever, so this is achieved by using component communication. So how do you do that? So which is my parent component here? Calculator, right? So here I'll create states. So what is state? State is nothing but the data which is inside your set val is equals to use. I'll just move this to the side so that you can see this also. So what I'll do, I'm creating a state. This is the syntax on how you create a state. The reason why we are creating state is because Angular doesn't care or doesn't render, sorry, React doesn't render whenever you change a variable. React only cares about props and state. So whenever there is a change in state, it will re-render or else it will ignore. That's the reason why you're creating a state. When you create a state, you need to set a default value. And then this state returns an array. So you need to destructure this, access the value, and then the setter function. So whenever you want to change the value, this value should be changed with the setter function. You cannot directly change this value. Okay, this is the rules on how to use the state. Okay, I'll show in the PPT. So yesterday we went through what are states, right? You can see this is the syntax on how to use the state. Okay, once this state is done, I need to pass this state value to my display component, right? So how do I do that? I'll copy this. Where is my display component? Here, right? I'll pass it as props. Calval is equals to calval. So now I have successfully passed my state to my child component. So this is how you pass data to my child component. Okay. So now how do I access this inside my child? Using props, right? So come to your calculator display and then you need to access inside here props. And then inside props, what is a props? It's an object. So how do I access anything inside an object? Using dot notation, right? So where do I need to attach this? Inside the value. So I'll remove this 10. I'll do props dot which is the parameter I'm passing here? Calval, right? That means calculator value. I just gave a short form for this. So inside you need to access dot props dot calval. So now once I do this, you can see the thing here. So I'll go to my calculator component and I'll change the state here. You can see as I change the state here, you can see the calculator display also gets rendered. You can see if I put 99, you'll get 99. If I put it as 4, you'll get 4. That means whenever there is a state change, this calculator component will send this state to the child. This child will access the state as props and then it will attach it to the value. Understood? What I'll do, I'll make this also read only. Okay, so now you can see this cannot be changed. Okay, now what I'll do, you understood this concept, right? How the component communication works. This is very important because as you divide the components, you need to know where to place the data and how to pass the data. Okay, once this part is done, now let's come to the buttons component. So the problem which I'm trying to solve here is whenever I click on this, this data should be sent to my parent component, which is my parent component, not app. Where is the button resting? It's resting inside my calculator, right? Where is the state? The here. So that means this is my parent for my buttons container. So how do you, so this, you're passing data from parent to child. But here what I need to do is I need to access data from child to parent. Okay. So in Angular, how did you do that? You created an event and then you called a function. That function will pass the parameters, right? Similar way in Angular, and sorry, in React, if you want to send the data from child to parent, you'll use callback functions. So this term you should be familiar with JavaScript. So this is the one of the most used term in JavaScript. So whenever you write some JavaScript code, right, you'll come across this callback function. So callback function is nothing but a function which has been passed as a parameter to another function. So we'll go through how do we achieve. So now you know how to pass data from child to parent, right, as a props. But if you want to pass the data from child to parent, so this is from parent to child. I'll add in the comment itself. Parent to child. So, but here I need to pass the data from child to parent. So for that you'll use callback function. So how do you achieve that? So the thing is here you need to create a function. Handle button click is equal to, I'll create an arrow function here. And then I'll get the data here. Okay. Now what I'll do, I'll just log. I'll print something button. Data is common. Okay, so what I'm basically doing is I'm creating an arrow function. This arrow function will be getting a parameter. So this parameter I'm console logging. So how do I access console log? Right click, inspect, go to your console. Ignore this errors. So now what we'll do is we need to pass this function as a props, right? So yesterday we learned what are props. I'll open the PPT. These are the props, right? So from parent to child, you will pass as props. From child to parent, you will emit events. So we'll see how do we achieve that here. Here you can see in the PPT itself, inside the props, you can pass anything. You can even pass a function. So now we'll pass a function. So as of now, we saw how we pass a variable, right? So we'll see how we'll pass a function. So how do we pass a function? Similar way. So I'll copy this handler function and then I'll paste it as a props is equals to brackets. Once you pass it as props, how do you access inside a button component? So just copy this and then go to your buttons. Here you need to access it as props, right? Then here you need to go to the input. And then you need to add an event. So here you can see in the PPT, child will emit, right? Emit events. So what is that event? So what am I doing here? You can see here when I click on this is a click event, right? So I need to define a click event inside my buttons component. So what I'll do, I'll create on CLICK. Here I'll create a inline function. So inline arrow function. So the syntax is round brackets. And then I'll call this props function, props dot. Then I'll pass the button. So now I'll explain this. What I'm basically doing is whenever I click here, right? You can see here, as I click on, if I click on C, button click, data is C. If I click on minus, I'm getting minus. If I click on is equals to, I'm getting is equals to. Click on 2, I'm getting 2. That means I'm successfully passing my data from child to parent. So how did I achieve this? I'll just give a quick revision of that. So the buttons container is inside my calculator, right? So this calculator becomes the parent. So because this has the state. Okay. So now what I will do, I'll create a handler function. So this function will get a parameter as a data. So this data I'm just console logging. Okay. So now this function I'll pass as a props to my child. Which is my child? My buttons container. So inside to the buttons container, I'll pass it as props. Okay. Once I pass it as props, how I'll be able to access this using props, right? So now I'll go to my buttons container. So inside my buttons container, so what I need to do, I need to do props. So how do I trigger this function which I passed? So function means it should be called, right? If you just simply pass a function, if you don't call, there's no point of it. So how do I trigger this function on click? So you can see if I click, that means the function should get triggered. So for that, what I did inside my buttons container, I created an event called as on click. And inside on click, inside the round brackets, because this is how you access your JavaScript expression, right? So inside I created an inline arrow function. So this syntax is called as inline arrow function. So here what I'm basically doing is, I know this button container has a props. So this props I'm accessing it and then I'm calling it and then I'm passing the button data. What is the button data? The value we are setting here, right? You can see the value is button. That means this star 97 and all, it contains inside my button variable here. Okay, so the same thing I'm passing inside my handler function. So once when I click on this button, what happens is this handler function gets called. So once this function gets called, however, it's getting to access to button, right? So this will go to this calculator and then it will print this statement. So did you understand this? So if I click on this button, this function will call and then this data is passed. So where is this function defined? Inside my calculator. So it will come back here, it will get the data and then it will print. So now we can access the data from child to parent. So now we understood how to send the data from parent to child and child to parent. Okay. If you're still getting confused, I'll share the PPT with the ma'am so you can access the PPT and go through the PPT. Okay. So this is how you achieve the data communication inside your React application. So now what we'll do is, so let's now how do we know the data is accessible inside this, right? So now let's start writing some logic here. Okay. So how do I write the logic here? So first is create a condition if data is equals to C. That means cancel, don't do anything else. Else data is equals to I won't write the logic. I'll try to handle this logic first. First is you need to put three conditions. So one is if there is cancel, you need to remove everything, right? If the user plus cancel, you should remove everything. If the user presses is equals to, you should have to add. So for that, what you have to do is, so here come to see which is the data which I'm able to access here. Just a minute, I'll open side by side. This logic is very important to understand. So here you can see, so this is nothing but the state data, right? You can see here, use state. So if I change this to 8, it becomes 8. This is my state data. So how do I change my state data? So as of now, I'll just give an empty string. It's up to you. You can give 0, you can give empty string. It's up to you. So what I'm doing is, if I click on C, so usually what happens inside a calculator, if you click on C, right? AC or else something like C, it gets removed. That means it gets cancelled. Similar way, what I need to do, if you click on the C, if whatever button which I'm clicking, if it is C, I need to change the state. So how do you change the state? You cannot directly change the state. You need to use the setter function. So what I will do inside this first condition, I will, whenever a person clicks on C, I need to change it to empty. So how do you do that? How do you change the state? Using the setter function. So I'll call this setter function inside my if condition brackets, just empty string. That's it. It's very simple. So the logic what I'm writing here is if the button pressed is C, set the chase state to empty string. That means nothing. Okay. The second is, let's handle this is equals to. So if the user presses is equals to, what I need to do? I need to calculate the value. So how do I calculate that value? In JavaScript, you have something called as eval. So eval is an inbuilt function which is used to calculate from a string data. So for that, first, the syntax is const result is equals to eval data. That's it. So now let's try logging and seeing what is the result. I'll refresh this. You can see here, React is saying an error here. Let's see, let's go through this error. Each child in a list should have a unique key. That means the thing is, in React, there is a concept called as key. So whenever you're looping something, so where am I looping here? Inside my browser container, right? So whenever I loop something, React will ask you to give a unique key. Okay. The reason why it asks for a unique key because so that it can identify. So React will use some kind of algorithm behind the scenes so that based on the unique key, it will try to identify itself. So for that, whenever you use a loop using a map function, you will be able to access two parameters here. One is button and index. Index is nothing but your number of times you're iterating. So what you need to do is usually you pass this index as the key here. Key is equals to index. So now React will get satisfied. So now if I refresh this, the error is gone. Okay. So now what I'll do here is, so now you understood this, right? If it is C, I'm setting it to empty. If it is equals to, this is a inbuilt function inside your JavaScript. So this will just evaluate your data and then I'm storing inside the result. I'm console logging the result. So now let's see what happens. Unexpected token is equals to, okay. Oh, wait. Let's try to set the results. Let's try logging the data here and see which buttons I'm clicking. You can see here, if I click on this, I'm getting 5. If I click on plus, I'm getting plus. If I click on C, I'm getting C. Okay, if I click on 1, I'm getting 1. But this data is not displaying inside here, right? That's how a calculator works, right? Say, for example, if I have calculator, if I press 4, it gets displayed here in the display. If I press 6, the 6 gets displayed. So, but here you can see this is not, but I'm able to access the data, but this data is not getting displayed inside my display container. You understood? So now let's try to fix this problem. So whenever I click on something here, this data should get displayed inside here also. So how do I achieve that? So how do I fix this problem? For that, come to the last. So here, okay. First is if it is C, set it as empty. If it is equals to, what you need to do, just evaluate whatever data you have and then set it inside my setter function. Okay. But now we have achieved C and is equals to. But as we are typing, we can't see what values you are typing, right? So to handle that, come to the last condition of your else. Okay. Inside here, what you have to do is first, you need to calculate the new value. For that, I'll create a new variable. Cal val is equals to. What I'm basically trying to do here is first, I'm taking my state. Okay. And then plus this data. And then I need to set it as a cal val. I'll explain what is this logic. So what I'm basically trying to do is I'm creating a new variable. This variable contains the state as well as this data. So I know by default, this is a string, right? And even this data, what is this data inside my button container? Even it is also a string. So when I do plus in between, what happens? It gets concatenated. So once I concatenate my state and the data, the button data, this I'll store it inside a new variable. Then this variable, I'll put it inside a setter function. So now you can see the magic here. As I click on 7, I'll get 7. 9, I'm getting 9. 8, you can see here. If I click on C, it becomes empty. You can see here. Let's try to see this side by side. So for example, what happens is when I click on 7, right, it goes to this condition. So what it does, first it takes my state, it takes the button which I clicked, it will attach and then it will set it as a state. Here by default, the state is empty. The button I clicked is 7. So empty string plus 7 is 7. And then I'm setting it as 7. So you can see 7 gets appeared. Okay. So now if I click on see what happens, I'm setting the state as empty string. That means if I click on C, it becomes an empty string here. If I click on is equals to what happens? First, it will evaluate the data. Then you can console log, it's up to your wish. And then whatever evaluated result is there, I'm setting that result inside my setter function. The reason why I'm using setter function is because you cannot directly modify the state. You have to use the setter function. So now let's see whether my calculator application is successfully running. So now what I'll do is first 5 plus 5 is equals to, now you can see there's nothing here. That means there is a problem here. Let's try to fix it. Go to my console. Is equals to, okay, let's see what's in here. First condition is this. Second condition is data report is equals to evaluate this data. Just a minute, I'm trying to figure it like what's the error here. Go to the console. You can see unexpected token. Okay. Let's try to log the data first. So what the React is complaining is there is some problem with this is equals to here. Okay. So now let's just try to debug this. So how do you debug it? So whenever you get some errors, right? So in the console itself, it will show which error or where am I getting this error. So here you can see it is saying uncaught syntax unexpected token is equals to at object.handle button click. You can see if I click on this, right? So what the browser will do is it will take me to the actual source code. So now if I minimize this, you can see this is how the browser executes your JavaScript or React or like every other application. So I'll come back here. If I click on here, you can see here, first it is saying there is some problem inside my calculator.jsx. And then you can see here, it also says which line here. You can see it is 16. So now I'll go to my 16. Where is my 16th line? Here. So there is some problem in here. Okay. So now let's try to see what's the problem. So here what's happening? Yeah, I got to know what's the issue here. So here you can see the thing is, so this is how you debug, okay? Like as you type the code, no matter how much talented you are, you have to debug it. So here I'm saying I'm saying how to you usually debug when you're writing some code in big tech companies. So if you get some errors here, you can see there are two instances here. One is my calculator instance, another my button container. So here you need to understand the syntax. So this is saying that inside this line there is some error. Inside which component? Calculator.jsx inside the line 16. So now if I go to my calculator component, where is my line 16? Here. So the JavaScript is complaining that there is some error here. So now I got to know my what is the mistake I did. So without this, it will take me a lot of time to fix this error. But since the JavaScript, the browser itself is suggesting, dude, there is some error in 16. So now what I'll do, I'll just go to the 16. I'll say, okay, fine. Now I know what's the problem. So the problem here is, what I did is, so here when I click on this button, right? So what I'm getting is equals to. Here I'm checking if data is equals to, and then I'm using the same data here. That means inside the data, there will be is equals to. So what is eval of is equals to? It's nothing, right? It's just empty. So now here, instead of data, I need to access the state value. So now instead of data, I'll put calval. So now once this part is done, you can see I'll refresh this. So now I'll do 8 plus 8 is equals to. You can see I'm not setting here, right? It's console logging. So if I go to console, you can see I'm getting 16 here. I'll refresh and so I'll do 5 plus 5 is equals to, I'm getting 10. But it's not displaying here. So how do I make this display here? I need to set it as a state. You can see here. I'll remove this. So now the state has been set. So now if I refresh it, so now if I do 5 plus 5 is equals to, I'll get 10. Minus 4, I'll get 6. If I do C, it gets cancelled. So did you understand this? So now this is how you create your calculator project inside your React application. The reason why I did the calculator project is, so majority of the times when you go for offline interviews, right? They'll or else let it be online or offline. They'll ask you to create a calculator application using React. So for that, you have to understand the logic behind it. So now you can see 6 into 6, I'll get 36. Okay, so now I'll cancel it. 1 plus 1 minus 1 is 1. 7 into 2, 18. So now like you understood the logic, right? So what I did is I created a container and then I created a display component and then a button component. And then inside button component, instead of copy pasting 20, 30 times, I have looped here. Okay, so once I looped here and then I access the button data. So once I do that, I created two events here. So one is the parent is passing the child, the data to the child. So how did I achieve that? I'll go to my component. So here you can see, first is I'm passing the data from data to my child. I'll put a hyphen here so that you won't get confused. Here you can see this is how you pass the data from parent to child as props. So if you want to pass, say for example, if you want to get the data from child to parent, first you need to create a handler function and then take a parameter and then pass that function. This function should get triggered inside onClick. So once it gets triggered, you'll call the function, you'll pass the data. So this data is accessible inside my handler function. So once I'm able to access this data inside my handler function, so what I'll do, I'll create three conditions. First condition, if it is C, I'll change the state to empty. So how do you change the state? Using the setter function. So using setter function, I made it as empty. So if it is equals to, what I'll do, I'll use an inbuilt function called as eval. So what does eval do? Eval will calculate and send the result. This result I'm setting inside the state again. So next, whenever I click on this data to display here, what I'm doing is I'm concatenating my state as well as the button data, and then I'm setting inside my display container so that whatever buttons I click, it gets appeared here. So now at last, let us try to differentiate the button styles here so that it looks more prettier. So for that, what I'll do is go to your button container. So inside the button container, what you have to do is try to type this. First is this syntax is similar. It comes under your Tailwind CSS. So what I'll do is I'll give a different style for my buttons and a different style for my operators. Okay. So for that, how do you achieve dynamic class names inside React? So in Angular, we use something called as ngF, right? But there is no directives inside React. So for that, what you need to do is first go to your class name, and then after this, you need to add a brackets here at the beginning and end of your class name. Where here, right? I'll give a space so that it will be easier for you to see. So this is my class name. So what I'll do is at the starting and ending, add a brackets, flower brackets. Once this part is done, remove these quotes and use backticks. So this backtick is available above your tab key inside the keyboard. The reason why we are using backticks is in JavaScript, there is a concept called as string interpolation. So the thing is, if I use this right, I can write conditions inside the string itself. If you're getting confused by this, you should have to revise what is string interpolation that comes under the JavaScript concepts. So now what I'll do is basically, how do I dynamically add my CSS inside the React application? So this is how you do it. First, you need to wrap it inside the flower brackets, and then you need to use backticks. So this backticks is available above the tab key. So then here you need to write the condition. So what is the syntax for string interpolation in JavaScript? First is dollar flower brackets. Okay, this is the syntax on how to use string interpolation in JavaScript. Okay, so then here I'll add the condition. What is the condition? If button. So first is what I'll do is first let us try what we are trying to achieve here. Let us see what's the problem. First, I need to check if it is the button. I'll make the buttons as blue. Okay, so what I'm trying to achieve here, if it is button, make it blue, rest all make it orange. So that's what I'm trying to achieve here. So for that, what I'll do is first dollar flower brackets, and then how do you check if it is not a number in JavaScript? So the syntax is first exclamatory, and then is nan, and then you need to pass that button. After this, and then you need to check type of button is equals to what number. You can select number. So now if this condition, so if this is not, you can see there are two conditions. If it is, what does isNaN do? It will check whether it is a number or not. So if these two conditions are met, that means it is a number. That means what I will do, I'll add a class here. Okay, it is bg low 200. The syntax what I'm using here is bg org. So what I'm basically trying to do here is this is called as dynamic. How do you add your styles dynamic? So for that, first you need to create your flower brackets, and then you need to use backticks. So inside that you need to add a dollar and then flower brackets. So this is your JavaScript expression. First you need to check whether it is isNaN, and then the type of button is number, or else let me check it for a string. Yeah, so now you can see. Did you see the difference here? I'll make this 400. Make this 400. So now did you see This is how you dynamically add your classes inside your React application. So for that, what I did, I'll go through this again using backticks, using dollar and flower bracket. So this syntax is, it comes under your JavaScript concepts. Okay. For that, first you need to add a condition. And then this syntax is called as ternary operator. So what does this ternary operator do? This ternary operator, it will check two condition. So if this condition is true, I will make it blue. Else, I will make it orange. I'll show what's a ternary operator. If you're getting confused by this, you need to revise your JavaScript concepts. You can see here, ternary operator. So what does it basically do is, first, it will check the expression. If it is true, this gets executed, or else the second part gets executed. So that's what I'm doing here. If this condition is met, it will execute this one or else this one. So that's how I'm dynamically able to generate this style. So now you can see my calculator app is successfully working. So now you can use this calculator app, or else you can, I will share the source code with ma'am so you can collect it. 4 into 4, 16, minus 6, 10. Okay. So now, as of now, so yeah, that time is 9. So I'll wind up the class. So now you understood, right? So how do you use different components? How do you use component communication? And then how do you use map function? How do you dynamically add styles to your class names? And then how do you pass the data from parent to child? So tomorrow we'll go through how do you fetch data from the backend, and then few concepts of Redux. And then we'll see what are control components and how to use forms. So yeah, if you have any doubts, you can ask in the comment section. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you all for joining. So we'll wind up for the day. I hope you all marking your attendance. As you all know, attendance is very important to get a certificate. So kindly mark your attendance without any fail. Okay? Yeah. Good night, everyone. We'll meet again by tomorrow at 7:30. Thank you all.